Hello. Thank you very much. My name is Ana Sofia Meneses, and I will be presenting today a paper that is called The Interdisciplinarity of Historic Landscape Characterization Methodology. And I'm going to focus particularly on a case study of the eastern coast of the Arabian Peninsula. So first, I would like to talk about what historic landscape characterization is. And it is a methodology for identifying and mapping the historic character of the landscapes, meaning that we're trying to see the differences and changes a landscape has suffered throughout certain time steps. So it's a methodology that goes into time steps. Um, it focuses on how human activity has shaped land, settlements, and field systems over time, and it reveals in time depth the landscape. So it helps us also identify features of great importance in the landscape. This is very important because it's become a very important tool in the sphere of cultural heritage, and in my particular field, archaeology, it has also become a very important tool to identify, as I said before, um, these sort of features that were very important for people right now and also for past cultures, Asian cultures. So the use of this technique, it involves several things, but it basically helps with planning and conservation. So in this part it helps heritage management and the management conservation of landscape that has been of historic importance. It helps also in the research and analysis. So it helps archaeologists and historians or other cultural heritage specialists to make informed decisions about how to proceed with the conservation of different monuments. It helps also with public engagement because it helps the community connect with their own landscape, with their own culture, and it creates this special link between the stakeholders, so like the people that have lived this landscape and then the landscape itself. And finally, it also helps with environmental management. So it also helps with how to proceed vis-a-vis the let's say the cultural sphere and then the environmental sphere, which is also a very important topic. Considering all of these possibilities that a historic landscape characterization can have in cultural heritage, but elsewhere, it presents itself as the best option to have an interdisciplinary approach to a particular topic. In this case, it would be my particular topic, which is archaeology and the study of movement of people in the Arabian Peninsula. So in this case, interdisciplinarity is the action of combining two or more disciplines into one activity. In my case of my own research, I'm applying geology, remote sensing, paleoenvironmental studies, computer sciences, archaeology, and history into one. So we can study better the mobility of people throughout the Arabian Peninsula in the Bronze Age and Iron Age. Particularly, we're trying to also highlight the importance of the landscape and the resources it offered, and the changes this landscape went to. So we're talking about the movement of the coastline, we're talking about the extraction of raw materials, and how these special let's say this special characteristics of the landscape help people adapt and move from one place to another in search of these different features. So again, we're talking about a special interaction between the space, meaning the landscape, and the agent, meaning the ancient communities that lived in this particular area. So I'm just gonna go very quickly into the different aspects, the different interdisciplinary aspects of my research and why they're important. So first, we start with the geological study, and then this includes also remote sensing because at this point we're using satellite images from Prisma satellite and Nmap in order to perform a hyperspectral analysis of the images to identify the spectral signature of copper and other materials and metals that were very important during the Bronze and Iron Age and shape the development and the trade of the ancient people in the Persian Gulf itself. So basically, the historical context for this is that we know from Sumerian and cuneiform administrative tablets that these methods were important from Magan, which is nowadays Oman. So we're trying to get all the satellite images that we can from this particular area of Oman, and then we're trying to pinpoint again the spectral signatures for this, particularly for copper, because it was the most important metal that was exported towards summer, which would be now like it would be Mesopotamia. So let's say nowadays Iraq. Um, Furthermore, we have the environmental studies, and here it's very important because this is a point where in my research we have the combination of machine learning, deep learning, and paleoenvironmental studies in order to study the regression or transgression of the coastline. This is very important because in order to perform this study, we obtain historic maps dating from the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, all the way to the 1900s. And then we passed all of those through a machine learning, deep learning model that predicted the movement of the coastline. And we inserted also sea data, data in order to see how significant the change of the coastline was during the time scope, which would be the Bronze Age and Iron Age. This is very important because we actually consider that in the Arabian Peninsula during this time, particularly in the area of study, which is Magan or nowadays Oman, we know that there was an encapsulated form of nomadism, meaning that there was a semi-nomadic movement of people, cyclical, going from the coastline to the inside, from the coastline to the inside, again, maybe to extract these raw materials, but also to export and obtain new goods. So the movement of the coastline meant that the settlements were changing and meant that there were a lot of like new adaptations and new techniques. So we're trying to see how much this coastline really moved to understand what sort of adaptations they managed to put in place in order to sustain their way of life. As I said before, there's also computer sciences because we have the use of machine learning algorithms such as random forest, deep learning models to do the analysis of the research I just said before. And furthermore, we are also incorporating the spatial statistics softwares such as R to understand the spatial distribution of certain elements within the landscape. But we're also keeping it very much grounded on the ancient societies. So in order to do that, we're trying to do some simulations with agent-based models in order to support archaeological studies and of course draw archaeological historical interpretations from all of these like studies. So basically historic landscape allows us to identify changes and resources in the landscape, and then through these very comprehensive and interdisciplinary approach involving geology, environmental studies, computer sciences, and other sort of disciplines, we can spot major changes that could have influenced the movement of these semi-nomadic people, and definitely played a role in how they interacted with their own landscape and with their own space, with their own environment. So just to give some concluding remarks, the interdisciplinary framework that allows this study allows us to identify the most relevant features in the landscape. Of course, always keeping in mind that this is a study that is very much grounded in the archaeological and historical sphere. Therefore, we're basing ourselves on historical evidence such as the Sumerian administrative tablets, and then we're trying to incorporate all of these different disciplines in order to give a more expanded, a more comprehensive historical interpretation. It also allows us to track changes in the landscape throughout the time. And this is very important because we're dealing with an ex novo context, so a new context that has just been discovered in 2022 that shows tracks of multi-millenary inhabitation. So it has a continuous story, and so tracking the changes would be it's very significant. And it uses the methodology, helps us incorporate other disciplines, therefore bringing together this whole concept of interdisciplinarity. Thank you very much.